Good morning. I am Ward 5 Councilmember Zachary Parker, Chair of the Committee on Youth Affairs. Today is February 2nd, 2026, and the time is 10:16. We are meeting in room 412 of the John A. Wilson Building and virtually via Zoom. I'm calling to order this performance oversight hearing, and I want to thank all of those signed up today to testify. Today, I am pleased to hear testimony from public witnesses on the performance of the Department of Youth Rehabilitative Services, or DYRS, and the Office of the Attorney General, or OAG. It is essential that we offer this public forum for members of the community to voice their perspectives and help us understand where there is room to grow. Over the past year, my team has drilled down on various oversight issues relevant to DYRS and OAG, including overcrowding at the Youth Services Center, or YSC, extreme temperatures due to faulty air conditioning at YSC, and fire safety problems at both DYRS facilities. We have also heard continuous discussions and had continuous discussions with the Office of the Attorney General, focusing on truancy and trends in juvenile crime. Overall, my team and I have tried to empower these agencies to work toward enhancing every stage of the juvenile justice process and to ensure that every child is given what they need to succeed. The Office of the Attorney General's Juvenile Section prosecutes juveniles for criminal offenses that occur in the district. In addition to prosecutions, OAG is involved in programming for families with chronically absent or truant children. OAG runs the Attend program embedded in elementary and middle schools to help families facing prosecution for truancy. For high school students, OAG makes referrals to the PASS program and the ACE program, which is run in conjunction with the Department of Human Services and Court Social Services. This makes OAG a leader in the truancy reduction work, and I look forward to hearing from the public about OAG's programming. The Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services bears the responsibility of supervision, custody, and care of young people charged with a delinquent act in the District of Columbia. The agency is responsible for delivering robust and effective rehabilitative programming for all youth. It maintains two facilities, secure detention facilities, the Youth Services Center on Mount Oliver Road in Northeast, and New Beginnings based in Laurel, Maryland. DYRS is charged with supervision of youth awaiting adjudication, including those charged as adults under Title 16, in addition to the supervision of youth committed to its care through DC Family Court disposition. The YSC is primarily intended for youth awaiting adjudication or placement, and New Beginnings is intended to be a place for committed youth with heightened needs. Over the past year, YSC has faced continual overcrowding. The facility was overcrowded 323 out of 365 days of the past year, meaning that YSC was overcrowded for 88% of the year. On September 10th and November 3rd, YSC reached high water marks of 131 youth for its 98-bed facility. While DYRS has claimed YSC as a temporary facility, the average length of stay is around 74 days. And it's important to note that this time does not accrue against a young person's ultimate detention. This facility was not designed for this capacity, and YSC continues to be a hazard to many of the juveniles committed there. In my team's discussions with people familiar with this situation on the ground at YSC, they describe brutal conditions resulting from this lack of space. Physical altercations have become the norm, with some children only having plastic bags to keep their personal items in, leading to fights over space and belongings. This overcrowding paired with exceptionally long wait times for placement have put YSC in crisis. This hearing stands as an opportunity to learn important context and gain further perspective on the conditions at all DYRS facilities. My bill B26-0407, Strengthening Capacity and Transparency at DYRS, requires the executive to develop a one-year action plan to drive down recidivism at YSC or within the district and to address overcrowding within 120 days of passage. I look forward to using this hearing to highlight the need for the executive to address these serious overcrowding conditions, and I am particularly interested in learning how this overcrowding has affected educational programming and other services at YSC. I'm also interested in hearing about families of juveniles at DYRS who may be struggling with getting information about their children or connecting with them during commitment. Parental engagement is vital towards juvenile rehabilitation and is an essential part of a smooth return back to the community. My bill B26-408, promoting parental engagement at DYRS, requires the agency to make continued attempts to contact parents about their children's rehabilitation and to keep electronic logs of these attempts. I look forward to hearing testimony today on the status of juveniles as bonds with their families. I'm also eager to hear from witnesses about the status of behavioral health treatment at both of DYRS's secure detention facilities. According to a recent report from the OIG JFO, based on the findings of Dr. Terry Lee, DYRS is falling down on its responsibilities to provide adequate behavioral health care to juveniles at New Beginnings. One of the most concerning findings is that 0 out of 10 youth in a sample study recommended for substance use assessment received these services. Also alarming in this study is that 13 out of the 16 sample youth recommended for family therapy by independent evaluators did not receive regular family involvement in treatment. These reports indicate that there is a serious issue with juveniles receiving the treatment they are legally required and entitled to receive while at DYRS. Further, I'm interested in how DYRS is managing the successful integration of the ROAD Act, the dynamic legislation specifically designed to improve the care for juveniles committed to DYRS and drive down recidivism. I look forward to hearing about how the agency is staffing up and implementing new protocols, as this has been fully passed and funded by the council. Finally, I'm eager to learn how DYRS is working to ensure that the recidivism rate for rehabilitated juveniles trends downward. In the recent report from the OIJJFO on New Beginnings, 78% of youth admitted and released in 2023 were found to have repeated involvement in the justice system. This indicates that there is still much more work to be done to ensure that our local youth get the treatment and rehabilitation they need and do not remain trapped in cycles of recidivism that endanger public safety. Ultimately, the Committee on Youth Affairs is determined to see DYRS and OAG achieve measurable outcomes that steer youth away from crime and recidivism and towards lasting success. The committee encourages these agencies to work proactively to prevent youth's encounters with the juvenile justice system and successfully deliver rehabilitative treatment should they become justice involved. Today is an opportunity to check in on the success of these goals. And as the chair of the Youth Affairs Committee, I know we must protect and provide for justice-involved families, or juveniles rather, and help set them on a productive path with skills they need to thrive. I look forward to hearing public comment on whether these agencies have accomplished this mission and how they have wielded their resources over the last year. I am glad that we are joined by my Ward 3 colleague, Councilmember Matt Fruman, and I'm happy to turn to you for an opening statement, if you have one.
Thank you very much, Chair Parker. I don't have an opening statement. This is a critically important area, an issue, set of issues, and I wanted to come and listen, but I don't have a statement.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. So with that, we are going to turn to our public witnesses. Again, I want to thank every public witness that is here today to testify in person or virtually. Your insights and experiences will help the committee to better understand the issues facing our child welfare system, or DYRS rather, and the actions we need to take to improve youth well-being. For anybody that is unable to testify today, written testimony is encouraged and will be made part of the official record. Anyone who is interested may submit additional testimony to our committee. And the record for this performance oversight hearing will close at 5:30 p.m. on Monday, February 16th, 2026. So with that, let's turn to our first public witnesses. First, we have Magdalena Chongas with the Council for Court Excellence, Tracy Velasquez with the Council for Court Excellence, Anya Kreider with Disability Rights DC, Deborah Shore, Sasha Bruce Youth Work, Penelope Spain with Open City Advocates, And with that, Ms. Chungus, it's good to see you again, and you may begin with your testimony.
Thank you, Chairperson Parker and members of the committee for the opportunity to present testimony. My name is Magdalena Chungus, Policy Manager for Council for Core Excellence. My testimony focuses on ongoing issues in the Youth Services Center and the need to reestablish independent oversight of DYRS. We continue to have concerns over the conditions at the Youth Services Center, particularly as relates to the overpopulation of the facility. As of January 26th, there were 112 kids in the 98-bed facility, which means youth are sleeping in the intake unit, hallways, or classrooms even. One of the issues contributing to this overcrowding is committed youth awaiting placement, spending long periods of time, often months, at YSC before being placed, an issue we explored in our October 2025 report, Committed Youth Awaiting Placement at the DC Youth Services Center. Of the 112 kids in the facility last week, 27 or roughly 24% are committed youth awaiting placement. Over the past 6 months, there's been some fluctuation in the population. However, the population overall has not trended downward since the passage of the Road Act or the release of our report. There's been no significant changes in the average length of stay for committed youth in the past 6 months, with the average length of stay in January 26 being approximately 75 days. Some of the issues identified in our awaiting placement report include limited available placements for youth in and around DC and the complications of negotiating payment for out-of-state placements. Recommendations included increasing community-based and less restrictive placement options and investing in community-based supports and services. However, DC has not been able to make any progress in increasing DC-based placements. In DYRS's fiscal year 26 performance plan released in November, they reported the percentage of committed youth in out-of-state facilities has more than doubled between 2024 and 2025. Being in an out-of-state placement may have a variety of negative impacts for our youth. Of the youth who participated in our report questionnaire, they reported limited access to family through phone calls and visitation even while at YSC. Meanwhile, a youth placed out of state reported not seeing their family during that time at all, and while out of state, picking up additional charges in the state with harsher penalties for system-involved youth, which is yet another concern for our community's youth placed outside of DC. The executive and DC Council investing in community-based supports and placements would provide more opportunities for system-impacted youth to be in less restrictive environments and closer to family. Finally, we ask that independent oversight of DYRS be reestablished, either through the reviving of the Office of Independent Juvenile Justice Facilities Oversight within another agency, such as the Ombudsperson for Children, or through increased staffing and resources for this committee. Testimony by OIJJFO before this committee has brought to light numerous recent serious issues with DYRS, including inadequate behavioral health services and the facility's fire protocols and equipment that were insufficient, which in the case of fire could make them dangerous and deadly. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and we appreciate this committee's efforts to ensure DYRS is fulfilling its obligations to adequately care for youth in their custody. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we'll have Tracy Velasquez.
Good morning. My testimony focuses on DYRS's progress towards complying with recommendations made in A Broken Web, Improved Interagency Collaboration is Needed for DC's Crossover Youth, a May 2024 report prepared by CCE on behalf of the DC auditor. The audit examined how well the district and specifically DYRS and CFSA serve crossover youth, young people who have been involved in both the child welfare and youth justice system. On behalf of ODCA, CCE recently drafted a report looking at these agencies' progress in complying with these recommendations. These findings will be reflected in the auditor's annual update scheduled for release later this month. Today, I will focus primarily on DYRS. First, an encouraging and positive development in the district's engagement of Georgetown University Center for Youth Justice to develop a crossover youth practice model, CYPM, was a central recommendation of A Broken Web. We believe this initiative has the potential to address many of the audit's recommendations by its conclusion in October. However, we are concerned with the project's limited scope. It is only focused on dual-jacketed youth, those who are simultaneously involved with both CFSA and DYRS. It does not include the broader population of youth, including those with child welfare system involvement that ended before their involvement with DYRS. Supporting youth with asynchronous system involvement was an explicit goal of the 24 audit. Unaddressed adverse childhood experiences increase the risk of recidivism and poor health and educational outcomes. Limiting the CYPM to only dual-jacketed youth risks perpetuating gaps in services and opportunities for prevention within CFSA. In addition, both CFSA and DYRS have delayed progress on many audit recommendations until the conclusion of the CYPM. CCE believes that there could be a number of recommendations that DYRS could be advancing now before the conclusion of this project. First is improving data collection and sharing. The audit recommended that DYRS and CFSA provide data on the full population of crossover youth to the Ombudsperson for Children so it can analyze and report on this population. DYRS stated that it does not collect data on crossover youth and therefore cannot share it. While DYRS doesn't have a specific field for crossover status, DYRS could take practical steps to begin collecting this information. DYRS could have shared their total youth population with CFSA to help identify these youth. Additionally, DYRS case files often contain references to prior CFSA involvement or histories of abuse and neglect. DYRS could begin uniformly flagging these pieces of information in their case management system that it already has. Additionally, DYRS should move forward with implementing an assessment tool validated on the crossover youth population, which their YLS is not. We urge the committee to follow up with DYRS on the status of YLS's implementation and the extent to which its results are being used to serve crossover youth better. Finally, we would appreciate this committee's assistance in implementing the audit's recommendation to fund the Credible Messenger program at a level to allow all crossover youth or those at risk of crossing over to participate. We encourage the committee to ask DYRS what barriers prevented full use of these funds in the past and how they can be addressed so funding can be restored and more crossover youth can be served. Thank you again for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we will have Anya Kreider.
Good morning, Chairmember Parker and members of this committee. My name is Anya Kreider. I'm an attorney at Disability Rights DC. Disability Rights DC is the federally designated protection and advocacy program for people with disabilities in the District of Columbia. Our comments for today's oversight hearing are a continuation of our conversation in October regarding the impact of overcrowding on YSC's seclusion practices. For today's testimony, I will use the term room confinement. Again, it is our understanding that at this time, YSC has no meaningful way of tracking room confinement beyond inconsistent handwritten logs that are not digitized or analyzed. At October's roundtable, Chairmember Parker inquired about how other jurisdictions track room confinement data. A survey of other state and local laws on the topic revealed some states have monthly reporting requirements, for example, New York and Nevada. Like DC, others require annual reporting, for example, Washington and Massachusetts. Some states require public reporting, Colorado and New Jersey. Others require quarterly reports to their legislature, as is the case for Nebraska. While these examples are not nearly exhaustive and the details of the regulations vary, in short, it is common practice to track and report room confinement data. Nebraska published particularly helpful guidelines. Nebraska's policy requires room confinement reporting to include staffing levels at the time of the confinement. Additionally, the policy explains that the definition of room confinement is intentionally broad and could apply to a range of practices, including involuntary cooling off periods, protective custody, medical quarantine, and lockdowns for head count, shift change, or facility emergencies. The policy goes on to advise that facilities document and report on any practices that could be considered room confinement. The Annie E. Casey Foundation Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative, JDAI, is a national network of juvenile justice system stakeholders working to build a more equitable youth justice system. JDAI recommends staff provide notice to guardians and the youth's attorney, or GAL, of the use of room confinement by the end of the next business day. In fact, for youth with disabilities and mental illness, JDAI standards recommend that the facility provide notice to the Protection and Advocacy Agency within 24 hours. In DC, that would be our office, Disability Rights DC. These standards also recommend that facility administration compile data on the use of room and confinement that includes whether the youth had an identified mental health disorder or developmental or intellectual disability, in addition to disaggregating the data by race, ethnicity, gender, special education status, limited English proficient status, and length of stay. While these would be best practices, Disability Rights DC believes that at a minimum, it is DYRS's responsibility to develop practices that align with and are responsive to DC law. In last year's oversight documents, DYRS reported that room confinement is documented in facility logbooks or door sheets. Based on our experience in the facility, these door sheets are only sometimes maintained, often hours behind and kept in stacks next to the logbook as opposed to on youth doors. DYRS leadership should be invested in collecting this information so they can understand the functioning of the facilities they are responsible for overseeing. Thank you for this opportunity to submit testimony.
Thank you for your testimony. And I don't believe we have a copy of it. If you could please submit it.
Absolutely.
Certainly want to follow up on those. Do we have Deborah Shore online? Deborah Shore, if you can hear
Hi
me.
there.
Oh, there you go.
Deborah Shore, yes.
Opposed to on youth doors.
You may give your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Leadership should be invested in collecting this information. so they
Chairman
can understand
Parker
the
and
facilities they are
Councilmember
responsible
Fruman,
for overseeing.
I'm happy to testify today. I'm here to be sure that you know about the important CARES project, which was initiated and supported.
I'm sorry, 1 second, Ms. Shore. It sounds like maybe you're playing something back in the
No,
background.
that has been in the background the whole time I've been on. I don't know that that's me.
Okay, why don't you keep going with your testimony and we'll try and troubleshoot that on our end.
Yes. All right.
You may-
Hold
may
on a
give your
minute and should I check and see and you'll let me start over?
Yes,
I have had this in the background the whole time. I was going to suggest something was wrong.
it sounds like maybe you have a feed that's playing the video. If you have a browser with the
I'm sorry, 1 second.
council's live cast,
Like maybe playing something back in the
or
background.
maybe you have the live stream on.
The whole time I've been on. I don't know that that's me.
Okay, why don't you keep going with your testimony and we'll try and troubleshoot that on our end.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Should I? Thank you so much for the opportunity to
Yes.
testify today. This in the background the whole time. I was going to suggest. I'm hearing the feed.
Sounds like
Yes,
have
it's
a-
okay. We're gonna push through it. But again, my team is saying maybe you have the live stream playing in the background.
maybe playing or something.
Is that better?
I think you got it.
Oh, my God. Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
Ye- Yes.
Technology is not my friend. Thank you, Chairman Parker and other members of the committee for the opportunity to testify today. I am here to be sure you know about the important CARES project, which was initiated and supported by the Attorney General and his staff, and why its contributions to improving youth and family life in the city should be supported. First, Sasha Bruce is an agency that has over 20 programs that support youth and families. We've been in existence for more than 50 years, and our Sasha Bruce House program is the only program that serves under 18-year-old who are otherwise unhoused. The teens and young adults in our city who are in crisis and unhoused were the primary focus of our work. But we have also invested in a lot of programming that is school and community-based as a means of helping to stabilize youth and families and prevent youth homelessness and family dissolution, otherwise prevention. It has therefore always been an important part of my wish for these many years to see the creation of more diversionary paths for young people who become part of the juvenile justice system due to intra-family conflict. But it was the OAG's office that brought the essential partners together and led us to carving a new path for these youth and families. It was their vision and commitment that deserves recognition today because the CARES project is making a difference for families, and it was their vision that made the program come into existence. I also want to thank the Metropolitan Police Department, who is a wonderful partner with us and refers clients into DHS, who also has been and provides funds for this initiative. Let me tell you about CARES. Sasha Bruce has 2.5 staff who are trained in family strengthening approaches in youth development. The police or the OAG refer families that are in crisis and who need immediate help. Our staff make decisions to offer respite at the Sasha Bruce House or to begin family services in their homes. The services are focused on stabilizing the family, but also support youth in school and/or any of the community issues that they present. That we are able to start services quickly and have a respite alternative is essential. We also believe that our approach, which has been curated over many years, is really important because CARES is a now successful program. CARES has worked with 30 families over the past year and currently has 14 active cases and 6 more in the early referral stage. The referral system started quite slowly, but with the commitment of MPD, it has grown, and we are so pleased that they recognize how important this can be. We get calls every day. We provide each of the clients with assessments of their functioning called the CAFIS. It's an evidence-based practice. We have seen tremendous improvement in each of these clients' CAFIS scores at their exit. Also, the parents are asked about their satisfaction with the program when our intensive services are ending, and their comments have been consistently about how helpful the program has been. One among all of the young people we have seen has become involved in the justice system, and we have coordinated with courts and DHS, who have encouraged us to continue work with this young person and family because of the strong relationships we have with them. So that's a pretty good standard too. Families who continue to need support after a 3 or 4 month period are referred to DHS or other providers. Our staff report how meaningful the connections have been with the families, such that parents call for assistance with issues that emerge, and we help with them even after the client has been active. The average age of the CARES client is 15. We have had clients as young as 11. I believe that the CARES program is an important addition to our service system, which is very limited to the services that we provide families in crisis and oriented to prevention. I am also pleased to provide a good report and want to elevate this request to you and consider ways that this initiative can grow. We are demonstrating impact, and with more time to continue to do so, we will continue that. The OAG has led the way, but I appreciate they may be not able to sustain this because it's part of a demonstration. I believe that the leadership by the council may be necessary to ensure this good work of building a new road will not be lost in the near future. I also want to say that Sasha Bruce interacts and works in partnership with DYRS in a number of ways. We provide shelter homes for both boys and girls and are one of the credible messenger programs in the city. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Shore. I gave you some extra time, given the technical difficulties.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Can you
it.
please make sure you submit your testimony to the committee so we can have it?
I will.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll have Penelope Spain.
Good morning. My name is Penelope Spain, and I'm the CEO of Open City Advocates, which provides legal counsel to youth committed to DYRS. I'm here today because DYRS is not complying with the Road Act's basic requirements for individualized rehabilitation and reentry planning. Despite the Road Act requiring individualized rehabilitation plans, or IRPs, DYRS is treating the requirement as a paperwork exercise. Instead of producing plans that are genuinely individualized, we repeatedly see DYRS substituting other boilerplate documents that are not individualized or structured in a way that could even vaguely guide a youth's rehabilitation. The Road Act also requires discharge and reentry planning, which DYRS is absolutely failing to do. The Act requires that reentry planning begin no later than 60 days after an out-of-home placement. It should identify where a young person will live upon discharge, in which school they will re-enroll, what behavioral health supports will be in place, and how continuity of care will be ensured. It also includes supports that cultivate family engagement and stability. These things cannot happen if the plan is kept secret until after the child is released. And DYRS has made clear that secrecy is indeed its policy. In response to our request for discharge plans, DYRS stated that, quote, "A completed discharge reentry plan will only be finalized and shared upon the youth's release." That is not reentry planning. You cannot coordinate reentry if no one sees the reentry plan until the young person walks out the gates. This secrecy is compounded by DYRS's failure to hold the meetings that would make individualized planning possible. DYRS is not holding regular team decision-making meetings, or TDMs, for youth in out-of-home placements. For youth placed out of state, DYRS relies on progress meetings run by the facility rather than conducting DYRS-led meetings that would keep the DC-based members engaged and prepared for discharge. For youth at New Beginnings, DYRS does not conduct TDMs except at discharge. Again, reentry planning cannot be done behind closed doors and revealed at the last moment. We asked the committee to press DYRS on 3 points. 1, develop the IRPs. Require DYRS to share its IRP template, materials used to train staff in how to draft the IRPs, and anonymize samples of IRPs that have been developed. IRPs should align with each child's existing clinical evaluations, tailored to each child's needs, and recognize their natural support systems. 2, develop and share reentry plans before release. Require DYRS in collaboration with the child's treatment team and family to develop discharge and reentry plans within 60 days of placement. Update them monthly and share any updates with the youth and the full team well before release. And lastly, implement team-based planning meetings. Require DYRS to regularly conduct TDMs for all youth and ensure that those meetings include meaningful reentry planning and concrete discharge steps and logistics. Thank you, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge we've also been joined by my at-large colleague, Councilmember Donnie Crawford. We're going to start with a round of questions. We'll do 10-minute rounds, and I'm happy to jump in. But before I do that, Councilmember Crawford, did you have a statement? And if so, you can give your statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson Parker. Good morning, and thank you to everyone who is here today to share your expertise and advocacy on behalf of young people in the district. Today's hearing is an opportunity for us to listen closely to those who work every day at the intersection of youth development, public safety, and justice. Your testimony helps us understand not only how our systems are operating on paper, but how they are experienced by young people and families in practice. As we hear from you, I am particularly interested in how recent policy conversations, including the expansion of juvenile curfew, intersect with the realities of what you see in the field, especially as they relate to prevention, engagement, and the role of agencies like DC Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services and the Office of the Attorney General for the District of Columbia in shaping outcomes for youth before deeper system involvement occurs. I look forward to learning from your insights and using them to inform how we think about both accountability and prevention in our juvenile justice approach. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to hearing more of your testimony.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Chungus, thank you for being here and providing your testimony. The out-of-state placements is going to be an area of focus for this oversight hearing. It is something I continue to be alarmed by, that and this trend of not taking advantage of community placements and more young people in secure detention versus being pushed back out to community. Before we get there, though, I wanted to circle on part of your testimony about overcrowding. Can you elaborate about some of the conditions that you've seen or your team has witnessed as a result of overcrowding at YSC in particular?
Thank you. So in our report, Committed Youth Awaiting Placement, youth both shared their experiences at the facility, and we also got a chance to speak to some education staff there as well. The education staff in particular shared, which I know you've heard many times, how having overcrowding impacts their ability to provide education to these young people in a meaningful way. And this includes, which I didn't talk about, Title 16 youth who are housed separately from the rest of the young people at YSC. And one thing in particular, then we were talking to education staff, they shared this, because Title 16 youth are housed separately, they're teaching right to kids who are on a wide range of grade levels from the same class, essentially, right? So they don't have the ability to break these kids up by their grade level that they would if they were commingled. And as well. And we also surveyed young people about what do they have access to beyond educational programming. And the majority of them reported that they don't have access to other meaningful programming outside of their educational programming while at YSC. And so we surveyed both kids who were at YSC at the time, which was now about a year ago in January of 2025, as well as young people who had previously been held at YSC about their experience. And then, as I also shared, one thing that also stood out is asking young people, do they have contact with their families? How often are they able to see their families? And while there was limited reports of limited contact for kids at YSC, more concerning is if kids are placed out of state, that becomes almost impossible for families to travel to go see their kids.
And that is a concern. And we believe firmly that community engagement, family connection is part of that rehabilitative process for these young people. As you likely know, we moved the legislation that would require this to be documented in a more thorough way. And so I appreciate the focus on some of the subjective logs that team members are keeping. I'm going to come back to you, but I want to keep moving for the sake of time. Ms. Velasquez, I really appreciated the specificity of your testimony. One thing that you focused on was the YLS and how it is not, you say is not a predictor for dual jacketed youth. Can you elaborate, and what might you advocate for in addition or to replace the YLS?
Right. Thank you. What DYRS has sort of adamantly said, we are sticking with the YLS. This is what we're doing. That's what they said basically in their response. That was one of the ones that they said, no further action plans we will take. What research has shown is that, so one of the things we do know is that dual jacketed youth and crossover youth have different needs and have different risks than kids who are only involved in the youth justice system, and which was sort of one of the big points of our whole report. And the YLS is sort of a risk needs assessment. It really doesn't look at the broad, and looking at are they responsive to in the same ways as other youth. And research has shown that it does not predict risk as much, which could lead kids to be treated more harshly or put in positions of having maybe less access to different kinds of privileges. And in terms of their needs, a lot of their needs, even if they are not dual jacketed, if they have prior child maltreatment issues, if they're unaddressed, they can really impact their success and lead to further reoffending and really create problems because they have this trauma that was never addressed. But interesting, what we do know about the YLS is one of the things it does ask a youth about is past abuse, not neglect, but abuse. And so it seems that even as DYRS is saying that we're going to stick with the YLS, they're not even using the data that's in it, right? They keep saying, we don't know which of our kids have been abused and neglected. We don't know, so how can we keep track of them? Well, if they are implementing the YLS correctly and completely, they should know this for every child. They should know whether they have a history of abuse.
But I just want to make sure I'm clear. So
I think
what more should we be doing?
I think looking at trauma screens and trauma assessments would be one, because that could definitely show, especially for kids who have that have sequential involvement with CFSA and then DYRS, that would help pick that up. So
are you thinking that every young person would get that trauma screen, or once you've been identified as a dual jacketed youth, then there would be supplemental assessments?
Well, I think that all youth can. I mean, back, I had done some consulting for DYRS many years ago, and the staff honestly will say almost all our kids have past trauma. If it's not from their parents, it's from the community experiencing, loved ones who've been killed, have substance use and mental health issues. So I would suggest that all youth have a trauma screen done at intake or after commitment, whichever.
And it goes without saying, the idea then would be as part of their individual rehabilitation plan, that those trauma markers would be targeted.
Absolutely. And having the staff trained, which is something that they're saying they will do after this Georgetown project ends, I think is critical because someone doesn't necessarily come in knowing what are some of the markers of trauma. It could be things like defiance in a facility that's seen as just being, a troublemaker, when it could actually be things related to maybe being abused in their past life, where they were very triggered by having someone speak to them in a way or approach them in a way, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kreider, thank you for your testimony. I thought it was super compelling. And I want to work with you and the disability rights team to make progress on this, because I agree that it is a problem. And one of the things that, as you were testifying, that we need to get clear on is how DYRS is defining room confinement. Now, is that based on the pod? Is that because you're in your individual cell? If you want to speak to that and have insight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. I agree. There's lots of terms being thrown around, whether it's like youth are secured or lockdown. Room confinement is defined in DC law, so I would encourage us just to stick to that definition across both when we ask for DYRS information, and that DYRS uses that definition in their data collection.
Understood. And it goes without saying that the reason why this is important is because it further traumatizes our young people. It ensures that they don't receive the services, the care that they deserve, and it makes it less likely that they're going to make progress on their goals while in detention at DYRS. So that's why we should be pushing against detention. One thing, not detention, room confinement. One thing I would just flag as an ongoing crisis at DYRS is staffing. And so what also comes to mind is how often these room confinements are triggered because of lack of sufficient staff at the facility. So thank you. Ms. Shore, I got again, if you can submit your testimony, I really appreciate, and I'm a big fan of the work at Sasha Bruce, and I want to see how we can support the CARES project that you talked about. But want to, again, thank you for your testimony. And Ms. Spain, I wanted to end here. The Road Act, as you can imagine, will be a big focus of our oversight hearings. I was intrigued when you said that you've heard word from DYRS that they will not share the exit planning until after the young person has exited DYRS. That just seems counterintuitive, counterproductive. And if you could just elaborate on any dialogue you've had with the agency there.
I wish I could elaborate. That's a direct quote from an email that we requested from General Counsel at DYRS. We're simply not being engaged in the TDM process, the discharge planning process. It's really hard for our organization, which continues supporting young people when they return to the district. We ensure that they have a stable place to live, that they're enrolled in school, that all of their services are in place. And sadly, we're just left absolutely scrambling at the last minute. We see a lot of kids who are at New Beginnings. They've progressed through the levels system, which is problematic at best, certainly not individualized, and certainly not addressing the needs that have already been raised by evaluations. But in those situations where we have young people who have progressed through the level system, they're on home petition level, it's only at that point that through our legal counsel that we're asking repeatedly for discharge planning to begin. Sadly, there are many youth who are sitting at New Beginnings for weeks, months, waiting for that discharge plan to begin. Again, discharge planning should begin on day one. I'll allow that can maybe be moved ever so slightly, but certainly not waiting until after a 6 or 9 month program has begun to even think about planning a meeting or looking at the evaluations and determining what supports in the community are appropriate. So I just think that DYRS is falling absolutely short, falling flat on discharge and reentry planning, at least from New Beginnings as well as from out-of-state facilities.
No, I'm clear there. And, I'm going to turn to my colleague, but it seems from the outside looking in, the agency is treating the Road Act as a compliance exercise. instead of meeting the goals of the legislation, which is to really anchor on rehabilitation for our young people and getting them the individualized support and care that they need.
That's right. And that's why in my testimony, I do recommend that the council ask to see what the template documents or what categories are addressed for each and every child, and then to also review some anonymized plans. What we're seeing are just absolutely, it's laughable. They're absolutely not individualized in any way, shape, or form, certainly not comprehensive in terms of what a young person would need to succeed in the community. And sadly, I think that's part of the reason why you see the recidivism rates as high as they are.
Understood. Yes. Thank you for your testimony. I'm going to turn to my colleague, Councilmember Furman, if you have questions.
Thank you very much, Chair Parker. On this discharge planning, is any explanation offered for why they wait until that point? Is there something about confidentiality? Is there something about they don't have a plan until you've gotten closer to the date and they're trying to figure it out? What's the explanation that they offer? Not how valid you think it is, but what is the explanation that they offer?
I really appreciate that question, Councilmember Fruman. It's a question that I've been posing for a number of years and trying to get at it from different directions. I don't have a clear answer other than it's kind of protocol. We're waiting for the care coordinator to coordinate something. We're waiting for a TDM to be scheduled. We're waiting to get word from the facility. I think that from my many years of experience working with this, there is a major disconnect between the staff within the facility of New Beginnings and the care coordination and whatnot that is happening out in the community. And I have asked for kind of org chart, like not necessarily org charts, but kind of what is the process? That's another great question. What is the process for discharge? Who starts it? Who needs to sign off on it? What needs to happen in the various steps? I, despite asking for this information for many, many years, have not received that. And I think that's just indicative of it's just kind of done ad hoc. It certainly, what this means for young people within the facility, their tension, they've done what they needed to do to get ready to go home, and then the agency is not responding in kind. And so that really sets up a really harmful negative relationship for the young person when they come out with this agency that they are supposed to be going to for support and guidance. When they are kept within the facility for many months extra, it just erodes the trust that we desperately need in order to make sure that the community reentry is successful.
I really, really appreciate that. I mean, one of the things I hear is discharge planning, and you said it, starts on day one. The whole idea of the system is to get kids out of the system. And so what are you doing while they're there, and what is your plan for when they get out is central to the whole operation. Ms. Kreider, you referenced that there is a definition in DC law of room confinement. Forgive me, I'm here to learn. I don't know what it is. Can you tell me what, because when I hear room confinement, I can imagine a bunch of different things. I frankly think, when I've been there, there are the little cells, there's the main room, and then there's the little cells, that room confinement means being confined to that small little room, but maybe I'm wrong. Can you help me?
Yes, and you're testing my recall here because I don't have the law in front of me. But I believe, so it is confinement in that cell or room. And I believe the two caveats that are provided in DC law are when during, so sleeping hours and then facility-wide lockdown, I think are the two caveats that are provided. And going back to what Chairmember Parker was saying, there is, it specifically says in DC law that staffing shortages are not a reason that room confinement can be used.
Okay, so I think, and Nora on my team showed it to me, I do think it's that cell room. So, okay, and I'm 66 years old and I can't sit still. My 16-year-old self, and I don't even want to think about it. So, I think it's Magdalena, you talked about the 75 days at YSC and the challenge of moving people into more stable situations, I think you kind of set up two options. One was, as I heard it, more local institutional capacity, and another was more local community-based placements. And am I right? Are those our two options? And do you have a preferred?
I mean, obviously the least restrictive environment for a young person, right, is the most preferred. So that would be a community-based, non-secure placement. One of the things that was brought up in the process of writing our committed youth awaiting placement report is that sometimes, so the people in the work group felt like people might be put in more secure placements because that was what was available and it was easier, rather than they needed a more secure placement, that they needed treatment and they needed these support services, and they exist in a secure facility. So not necessarily that they needed to be removed from the community, but this is where they could get those services that they need, right? And so we should have and should be able to support young people with those mental health services and other services that they need outside of a secure placement.
Okay. And the idea that out-of-state placements have, the percentage has doubled, I think you said. Can you speak to me about the relative cost of out-of-state placements, new beginnings, and community-based placements? And it may be you're not the right person, but maybe you are. Out-of-state placements, my assumption is that they're very, very costly. But can you help me with that?
I can't give you specific numbers about the placement costs. I will share one of the things that arose in our report was that DC reimbursement rates may not be competitive, so that impacts states, whether they want to accept a placement of a young person at their facility, and then adds to that delay is negotiating the rates with an out-of-state placement. But yes, secure placements are going to be more costly than in the community.
Okay, well, that'll be, I'm sure Chair Parker knows the answers to those questions or will. Tracy, quickly, because I'm going to run out of time. You talked about that the service, the Georgetown service, would be done only for dual jacketed, not for, and what percentage of the potential population that might be served in this way are dual jacketed? Is that going to be 50%, or is it going to be 10%, or something different?
When we did the report, and I know that I believe the Ombudsperson for Children was able to get a little bit more data in the past year, but when we did the report, DYRS reported there were 4 crossover youth. When we looked at when we were able to get some data from the Superior Court to do some of our own matching, it looked like there was about 100 crossover youth. So we're talking about 4%, 5% are dual jacketed. I mean, so many more kids come into the youth justice system because of their child welfare involvement and unmet needs that they've had in those years.
Okay. I had a feeling it was going to be a number like that, but thank you for that. Ms. Shore, the CARES program is intriguing. And I think you said 14 active cases and 6 in the pipeline, 2.5 staff people devoted to it. Am I getting those numbers right?
Correct.
And so, I mean, one of the things, and Chair Parker and I are both very interested in this in the truancy world, is who's best positioned to help families. And it seems like this program sounds like the kind of thing that we're hearing about in another place in a truancy world. And often in the truancy world, there may be justice involved youth who are become truant, and so I have a feeling there's a subset population. About how much is the CARES? Are you the only provider under the CARES program, and about how much money is devoted to the CARES program?
Yeah, it is about $200,000, and we are very short-staffed, really, because if the number of referrals that are coming have increased exponentially now that the police have understood the value of it. So yes, it is, there's lots of intersections and overlaps between young people who come to our Sasha Bruce programs just because they are having trouble at home, that are having enough trouble that they're getting involved in the court system, that are truanting. The relationship between truancy and any of these other issues is enormous. It's been shown over and over again. I mean, it's been shown certainly in terms of young people in the justice system, but it's also true with young people in the youth homelessness system. That seems to be the first step towards disconnection to family and community. So we certainly would be delighted to sit down and have more conversation about how we can make sure that we're sharing resources, sharing ideas. Sasha Bruce has invested for a long time in ways to train our staff to work with the whole family, and to, do the youth development part of it, but to also work with intervening in family conflict in such a way that it helps people to develop the skills to manage differently. So I really believe in what we're doing. And if there are other people that are approaching things similarly, we would be delighted to know more. Yeah, I mean, often I feel like that we do tend to have as a second thought working with the whole family. And I would certainly like to see that change.
All right, well, thank you very much. Sort of note to self and note to Chair Parker, because we're both thinking about
Yes.
where does it make sense to house this? And it's not that it would be for everything, but to think about something like this. I'm going to hold it on you, Debbie, that you made me go way over, and so, but very worthwhile. And so I'm gonna stop, but I'm gonna invite my colleagues while Ms. Creeder is here. I have to go. The education system in our youth facilities and the way in which children with disabilities are treated seems like an important issue, and I'd invite others to ask about it, even if I have to go.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Really appreciate it. Your questions. Councilmember Crawford.
Thank you, Chairperson Parker. So I had another meeting, so I missed the first few witnesses. I'm sorry for that. The committee did include a number of questions at the end of its pre-hearing questions to DYRS on juvenile curfew, and specifically the expansion of juvenile curfew. Did anyone testify on the juvenile curfew expansion? Okay, does anybody have expertise on it, either through research or through the youth that have been sent to DYRS because of it?
So this is not my area of expertise, but
Sure.
I actually feel really strongly about how the city is approaching curfew and the requests it's making of DYRS. I think we really need to remember that DYRS is at the deepest end of our juvenile justice system. And we are struggling to provide even the most basic of care for youth in facilities and in the community. And I think to ask this agency to also begin to address curfew is the wrong place to look for that. I think that we as a city need to be looking at the DPR, DCPS, DBH. What activities are we providing to young people that are really engaging them with school? And looking at it from that level. I think looking to DYRS, where DYRS has a particular lens, they are working with some of our most traumatized and highest risk young people in the district. And I think by categorizing or looking at this population of young people who are out of school is looking at it from a delinquency perspective as opposed to a needs perspective. And sadly, will probably funnel more young people into DYRS as opposed to truly addressing the truancy issue that we have. So I think that truancy also sends a message to our young people in the way that we address it as a city, that they are a problem, they need to be corralled, and they need to be kept in compliance. And I think that if we did more to hear why they're disengaging from school, figuring out other ways to positively engage them with all of our services throughout the city, that we would be much better served as a district.
You anticipated my next question because I was going to ask about prevention and what else we could be doing on the investment side to make sure that youth don't end up in DYRS for curfew expansions. Do you know of any jurisdictions that are models we should be looking for in this space? I know we've heard a lot about Baltimore lately just because of their crime stats going down over the past year, but I don't know if you're familiar with any other model jurisdictions.
On the top of my head, no, but I'm sure some other members of the panel may want to jump in, and I'm happy to do some research and get back to you on that.
I need to convene with Magdalena, but I think we had an intern do some research about the effectiveness of curfews last year. And if that's true, and this isn't a false memory, we will send it to you.
Oh, I would love to see that.
Okay.
And I think the chair would as well.
All right. We'll dig through the archive and see, but
Okay.
it rings a bell with me and we'll check into it.
Okay, thank you. And then,
I just,
oh, yes, Ms. Shore.
I just wanted to say that I really underscore what was said, that we really need to invest in more front end stuff. We need to, know that there are a lot of young people that are really not connected, that are out in the community. And of course, we should be doing more there, but that would make a real difference. I really appreciate that thought.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Ms. Shore. And then last thing on curfew, is there any data we should be looking at to understand whether curfew is helping or harming youth outcomes?
I don't have that at my fingertips, but I do know that we have that research and happy to send that along. I think that in general, curfews are not helpful and create a more harmful relationship between our police forces and young people and do more damage than help.
And Magdalena found the table, and rather than try and read it, I will go ahead and send it to you. But generally, they show they're not helpful. And having a degree in criminology, I also can tell you, like, labeling theory says that when you start treating children like criminals for normative behavior, it tends to worsen outcomes. And whether that's arrests, whether it's curfews, whether it's treating truancy like a crime, it basically is very more bad for their self-esteem, makes them feel like they are a criminal for these activities, which are many times rooted in needs and also just sort of adolescent risk-taking behavior.
Thank you. And because front-end approaches were brought up just as a method to make sure that our youth are okay, I'm just curious, at DYRS, how effective are those community-based programs that exist at keeping youth engaged and out of deeper system involvement?
Sadly, I don't think that we see those available right now, at least through DYRS. I think the OASIS program may be one area where young people with elevated risks are having some wonderful recreational experiences. But again, I look at that program and I see the need for the young people who are committed to DYRS. And my first question is why are more committed youth not further and deepening their engagement with that program? So again, I think that we're looking at the wrong agency if we're looking for those preventative services.
And I'll share something that was brought up both in our crossover youth conversations with the young people who had been crossover youth in the system and with youth awaiting placement, was the Credible Messenger program and getting increased access to credible messengers, and as well as making that available to Title 16 youth. So ensuring that all of the populations of kids who are involved with DYRS have access to those positive relationships with adults.
And I would like to add to that, because Sasha Bruce operates one of the Credible Messenger programs. And I was going to say that I can't speak for all of them, but I can certainly speak for ours. And I think that that is a very helpful way for us to be helping young people journey through the transition and their way in the world after they're coming out of New Beginnings, or out of New Beginnings. Yeah, there's an intensity that you can provide. There's a lot of family supports. There's a lot of capacity to individualize service there. When we are able to start right away and really connect with young people, I think that we're seeing a lot of positive impact.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Shore. I believe I have one more question. Chairperson Parker had his care plan and care act, and we marked up a few of those bills last week, 8 bills. I'm curious, are there any additional policies that the council could consider that would reduce unnecessary detention without compromising public safety? And if you don't know right now, you could also get back to me.
I will share something that I think also crosses over to Councilmember Parker's concerns around truancy, is investing in community schools. I myself have been a community school coordinator in Baltimore City Schools previously. And when you centralize wraparound services for young people in schools where they have relationships with adults and families have trusting relationships with adults, rather than having them come only from city agencies, it can really help in the delivery of those services and make sure that parents know who they can go to get those supports. So ensuring that schools have the ability to connect parents, not just to educational resources, right, but social services, to mental health resources, et cetera, through community schools models. So investing in that model in DC.
I can't help but bring up that, especially in the times we're in right now, having people that families can trust rather than going to maybe a government building where they might feel exposed is especially important.
Thank you. Thank you to this panel. Oh, wait, Ms. Shore.
I just want to underscore that big time. I think that that is not well enough understood and well known. There is so much involvement for so many of the families that we see that we're all talking about of the government, and it is not always a positive relationship. We provide a lot of the connections that are so much more well trusted, and we should be heralding that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shore. Thank you to everybody on the panel.
Thank you, Councilmember Crawford. 2 quick follow-ups. I would say on the curfew, I really appreciated the line of questioning. I think it is timely as there appears to be an attempt to make that curfew permanent. As you know, the council enacted it on a limited emergency basis. So if you have ideas to share with the committee, if you could please do so. I will say on the record, I'm not inclined to support a permanent version of a curfew for many of the reasons that you mentioned. The city was confronted with a situation, as we are all familiar with. How do we, I'm going to use the word corral, young people in an emergency timeframe while hopefully the executive is thinking about like more supportive long-term efforts? My concern continues to be, I'm not sure the executive is thinking about those long-term approaches and supports for young people around the city. I digress. Ms. Velasquez, I did want to just ask you one thing about the data collection for crossover youth. Now, I have looked at the ombudsperson's data, which, let me take a step back. I agree, data collection is all over the place. If you ask CFSA, DYRS, the ombudsperson, you're going to get different numbers about how many young people are in both of those systems. Are you familiar with the ombudsperson's data, and do you have any insight or reflection on accuracy there? Because I think the latest numbers, I don't have it in front of me, but I wanted to say they tracked it.
because I know that Magdalena did most of our work on the audit
Okay.
follow-up.
Yeah, I think, and what I asked the ombudsperson about their data and which remains unclear is why the numbers are so much higher from 2021 to 2024 in the number of crossover youth. I think, and in the conversations that we're having with Georgetown in planning this crossover youth practice model, there's been a lot of back and forth about the definition and who falls into this category. So I think.
And I do know the ombudsperson is defining it as any young person that has ever had contact with our child welfare system and our detention system. And I want to say the last cumulative numbers they had the count in like nearly 600. Which to me jumped off the page, and we had a meeting and discussion about it. So I just didn't know if you all had any insights. So if you could share that even after today's testimony, that would be helpful. Okay, thank you all for your testimony, and we'll go to the next panel.
Can I share one thing?
Sure.
There's a recent report from DC Action, and we've been noticing this in our drop-in center. There is such a strong relationship between homelessness and young people who were homeless as children. So, when you look at what the intersections are of the child welfare system, it also seems important to look at where the child welfare system maybe has really there are gaps because it's really striking how many young people report that they were homeless with their families and then became homeless. And so many of those young people, unfortunately, also have touched the juvenile justice system along the way. So there's a complexity of, looking at how do we really create a vision for helping to prevent these problems. What could we be doing more of?
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. And that's a good push as we anticipate our government witnesses to come forward shortly. So thank you all for your testimony. Next, we'll have Joshua Miller from Open City Advocates, Dr. Amy Wolfson from the University of Loyola, Maryland, Dr. Jennifer Woolard from Georgetown University, Commissioner Ashley Ruff from ANC 7F, Shamika Edwards, and then last but certainly not least, Max Broad from DC Voters for Animals. And I'm told we have some add-ons, Harry Mack, Lamont Rivers, and Janie Staton, who I believe are all virtual. With that, Joshua Miller, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chairman Parker. My name is Joshua Miller, and I am the Research and Advocacy Director for Open City Advocates. Before I start, I did want to say I have an answer for Councilmember Fruman, who asked about the cost of these out-of-state placements. I think it might be as important as some of the other things I'll say. I was just looking at a contract for an out-of-state placement that for 2 beds is almost $600,000 for a year. So $300,000 per child per year is one way of figuring the costs. Some of that is Medicaid reimbursable, but most of it is not. All right. Apologies, back to my testimony. I meet with the Youth Council at YSC every month. I know you do often as well. I hope you'll get to see them soon. When I met with them 2 weeks ago, I told them we would be here today, and I asked if anyone had a message for you. They struggle with that. They don't quite know who you are. But when I asked them if they had any questions for council, one young woman immediately raised her hand. She said, and I'm going to quote this because I think this is important, "What is your plan?" Seriously, do you even have a plan? How exactly are we being rehabilitated? This is what we're here for, right? Rehabilitation? This is a jail. not treatment. If we do not learn anything new, we are just going to get sent back here. We need them to figure this out. I need them to figure this out. I need them to figure out how to turn a no into a yes. All they ever seem to do is turn a yes into a no. There are all these fights, all these incidents, because there's nothing happening. Judges need to get the incident reports because they do not understand what is happening here. There is no structure. There are not enough staff. DYRS is so inconsistent. They break their promises. We get disappointed, and that just means we will be back. So ask them, what is your plan? If you boil down the auditor's 2025 report on New Beginnings to its essence, it does not sound much different. Failing to plan is planning to fail. The auditor's findings confirm what this young woman already knows. Of 72 youth admitted to New Beginnings in 2023 and later released, 56 of them, 78%, had further involvement with the criminal justice system. Even among those who completed the program, 70% later had criminal justice involvement. Completion does not predict success. That is not a therapeutic program. That is warehouse management with paperwork. At the last hearing, you asked me what transition planning should look like. Let me tell you what it looks like now. DYRS tells us they are waiting for young people to demonstrate they are ready for release. In practice, that means a young person works through the program, then sits on home petition with little useful programming, and then only then does DYRS begin thinking about a release plan. That planning takes weeks or months or more. These young people have short time horizons. They notice when promises are broken. And breaking promises to young children is one of the most reliable ways to teach them to stop responding to incentives. They become frustrated with the dead time, they act out, and the cycle restarts. Failure to plan is expensive. DYRS's 26 budget approved budget totals of about $97.5 million. With secure facility populations in the neighborhood of 175 youth on a typical day, the district is spending on the order of $1,500 per youth combined per day. At that level of investment, the public should be able to see individualized plans, real treatment, and real transition planning, not secrecy and delay. Chairman Parker, I'm asking you to do what this young woman asked. Put DYRS to the question in public. What is your plan? Because if DYRS cannot answer that, then DYRS is not focused on rehabilitating children. It is managing them. And the predictable result is exactly what the youth told me. They will be back.
Thank you for your testimony and your constant engagement with this committee in our efforts to improve what's happening at DYRS. Next, Amy Wolfson.
Just one moment. Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, I'm delighted to be here. This is the first time I've joined you. Good morning, Chairperson Parker and members of the council. I'm a child clinical psychologist, professor of psychology at Loyola University, Maryland, and a recognized expert locally and nationally on adolescent sleep. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of DC's DYRS. And I want to really be here just to discuss our collaborative initiative called Co-Developing Strategies to Improve Sleep Health and Behavior of Detained Adolescents. For more than 3 decades, my research has focused on how sleep affects adolescent mental health, behavior, learning, and many long-term outcomes. And the scientific consensus is clear. Chronic sleep deprivation in adolescence is associated with many behaviors I know you're all concerned about: impulsivity, aggression, depression, impaired decision-making. And yet, despite the importance of sleep for youth development, sleep health in juvenile residential settings has remained unstudied. To address the gap, DYRS has partnered with a consortium of sleep and circadian rhythms researchers from Johns Hopkins, Bloomberg School of Public Health, my institution, and Rush University in Chicago. And this collaboration reflects DYRS's commitment to evidence-based practice and its willingness to open its facilities to rigorous ethical research aimed at improving youth outcomes. We have 2 objectives: to advance scientific understanding of sleep hygiene and living environments among detained adolescents, and then to really develop actionable recommendations that in fact may affect some of the issues you've been talking about, and to improve sleep health across the facilities. The study is ongoing. We've recruited and engaged youth at New Beginnings, and we're now about to, this week, enroll youth from the Youth Services Center, YSC. All participation, of course, is voluntary. We have to obtain informed consent and assent from the youth and their parents or guardians. Currently, we have 20 youth who have completed the project. It includes 7 morning daily sleep logs, questionnaires assessing sleep patterns and emotional well-being, and a brief semi-structured interview focused on the youth's lived experience right now with sleep within the facility. We're also obtaining diagnostic and medication information from healthcare professionals at your facilities as part of the consent. And we anticipate about another 30 youth, 50 in total. We're also installing light measuring devices so we can get a sense of 24-hour light to understand environmental lighting conditions that actually really significantly affect sleep timing and quality. And once we're complete, the idea will be to have facility-specific recommendations that involve improving sleep hygiene and daily routines and schedules and other environmental conditions, including staff practices, and then to share these findings and best practices to the larger, broader juvenile justice world. Our collaborative work would not be possible without DYRS's leadership. They have demonstrated that public safety and youth rehab are strengthened, not compromised by these kinds of partnerships. It's been a wonderful experience. Improving sleep health is not a peripheral issue. It's foundational to behavioral regulation, emotional stability, learning and rehab, and overall well-being. And we believe together that such investments have the potential to reduce behavioral incidents, improve staff-youth interactions, I can't underscore that enough, and support better long-term outcomes. So in closing, I commend this collaboration. This is a model that I hope we can do more with, that is to say, working on community academic partnerships. So thank you for your time and your commitment. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you for your testimony. If you could stick around, I will have questions. Dr. Jennifer Woollard is next.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson Parker and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Jennifer Woollard, and I'm a psychology professor at Georgetown University with more than 2 decades of experience conducting research and program evaluation in juvenile justice in multiple jurisdictions, on adolescent development, and on evidence-based system reform. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify and describe my current collaboration with DYRS in strengthening research, evaluation, and data-informed practice. My current work with DYRS focuses on 4 primary areas: developing an evaluation of the OASIS mentoring program that was mentioned earlier, consultation on case management system reporting, student support for data entry and capacity building, and mentoring support for DYRS's research and evaluation team. First, I've partnered with DYRS to conduct an evaluation of the OASIS mentoring program, an initiative designed to provide mentoring and positive developmental supports to youth identified by the local school system who have not committed any delinquent acts but are at risk to do so due to attendance or in need of academic supports. The goal is not only to assess effectiveness, but to provide actionable feedback to DYRS leadership to strengthen the program design, sustainability, and scalability. This type of evaluation, we hope, will ensure that mentoring services are aligned with best practices and are responsive to the needs of the youth that are served. Second, I'm providing consultation to DYRS on the development of reports generated from its case management system. We know that agencies like DYRS collect large volumes of data, but they don't only become useful when they're translated into clear, decision-relevant, accurate information. So I'm helping DYRS think strategically about how data can be organized, analyzed, and reported to support internal management and external accountability, including guidance on performance indicators, data quality, and ways to communicate information in a meaningful manner. Third, Georgetown and my lab, the Community Research Group, has supported DYRS through student assistance with data entry and related analytic tasks, helping them to meet operational needs while providing our students, hopefully the next generation of juvenile justice practitioners and scholars, with hands-on experience in applied juvenile justice research. So we hope to increase DYRS's capacity to manage the data accurately and efficiently. And then finally, I'm providing some mentoring and technical support to DYRS's research and evaluation team to help strengthen internal capacity to design evaluations and conduct analysis and integrate the research into policy and practice decisions. Building this in-house expertise is critical for long-term sustainability and reduces reliance on external consultants like myself, while ensuring that research remains closely connected to agency operations. Thanks for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We are checking to see if others are online. While we wait, next we'll hear from Max Broad.
Hello, Councilmember Parker. It's good to be with you today. So as we reach the halfway point on the Green Food Purchasing Amendment Act, DC's food-related emissions are not going down. In fact, they are on the rise. The bill, which passed in 2021, sets a schedule for DC to reduce food system emissions 25% by the year 2030. This is a big deal, as over 1/3 of climate pollutants come from food and agriculture. To the agency, I know implementing this law is another in many variables you account for to deliver the meaningful work you do, providing sustenance and nutrition to your constituency. Believe me, I speak up to preserve our way of life too. This effort is not just about protecting the environment, it's about protecting our most vulnerable residents from the quietly deadly summer heat, the frigid snow and ice storms of the winter, and the vigorous extreme weather we experience. As we can see, extreme weather in other parts of the world, hurricanes, cyclones, droughts, heat waves, they can displace an already unstable population. When that population moves to a new country in pursuit of stability, that can give rise to right-wing populism that threatens our democracy. Working to stop climate change is powerful not just to protect people's livelihoods and lives. It's a tool to preserve the institutions that support us. As a means of assisting DC in the institutions implementing the Green Food Purchasing Act, I created a simple rubric, which I'll submit with the written testimony, to see who is leading and where opportunities are. The rubric measures 4 categories, whether the agency has submitted data, whether they're implementing they're including language in their contracts with their food vendors, whether they're implementing changes according to the law, and then in 4th category for bonus points to recognize where agencies are doing leadership. In this case, or in all cases, agencies were given a chance to review and add to our findings in advance of the final conclusion. And so here's a little bit about the results. The Department of Youth and Rehabilitation Services received points in 3 categories. They received points for providing the data on food procurement to DOEE. They received points for including mention of the Green Food Purchasing Amendment Act in their contract with their food vendors. And for full points there, they received partial points. The agency can include DOE's boilerplate language in contracts. And then they also received a bonus point for attending the Community of Practice meeting that DOE holds to talk about food procurement. So DYRS received 9 points in total in the analysis, which puts them in the middle, with the highest score an agency received being 13 points. DYRS stands out for being the first agency to have included DOE's recommended language in their food contracts with vendors. This will serve as a model for others to forward. With being short on time, I included recommendations that DYRS can take to implement their green food purchasing, and I'm happy to meet with them and give low lift, high impact ways to help move forward on this law so that DC can move our emissions on the decline. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. I'm going to make sure we don't have Commissioner Ruff online. Shamika Edwards. All right, and then I'm told there are 3 individuals that are together: Henry Mack, Lamont Rivers, and Jamie Staten.
Still plugged up. I'm good. Miles. You ready?
Okay, we have you, and you may begin with your testimony.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilman. Give me 1 second. First up, we have Lamont Rivers.
How you doing? My name is Lamont Rivers. Good day. And I am a participant in the Credible Messengers program. I want to start by saying thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my experience. Being part of this program has been one of the most helpful and life-changing experiences I've had. The Credible Messengers program has played a major role in my personal growth by building a strong foundation of confidence, respect, trust, and honesty. Most importantly, it gave me the persistent support at the time when I really needed it. My Credible Messenger took the time to understand me and where I came from rather than judging me. My Credible Messenger listens to me, offers me guidance, and has pushed me to make better decisions. Moments where I felt overwhelmed and unsure about my future, my Credible Messengers has never gave up on me. Instead of giving up on me, the Credible Messengers continue to show up, encourage me, and remind me that I could do better. One of the biggest ways this program helped me was by assisting me with getting into independent living program. Once approved, the Credible Messengers help provide basic necessities such as hygiene items, kitchen supplies, and other everyday resources to assist me with getting off to a strong start. Thanks to this support, I was able to feel more stable, more comfortable, and more prepared to live independently. The Credible Messengers program has also helped me with transportation to school, job interviews, work, and court dates. Beyond providing assistance, the Credible Messengers program is also about building a meaningful bond and fostering a supportive relationship. My Credible Messengers show up for me when others could not and provided support when others didn't have the willingness to do so. Whether it was through motivation, guidance, or simply being present, my Credible Messenger made sure I never felt alone in the process. The consistency and dedication made a real difference in my mindset and my future. In closing, because of the Credible Messengers program, I feel more confident in myself, more focused on my goals, and more hopeful about my future. I'm truly appreciative and grateful for my Credible Messenger and for the positive impact this program continues to have on me and so many others.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Rivers. I just want to make sure, are there others that are giving a testimony with you?
Yes, good morning. Yes, good morning, Councilman. We have 2 other people as well.
Okay, great.
Yep. Next up, we have Henry Mack. Good job, brother.
Greetings. My name is Henry Mack. I am a participant in the Incredible Messenger program. The Credible Messenger program has been genuinely life-changing for me, and I feel deeply grateful for everything it has given me. From the very beginning, the program stood out not just for its content, but for the intention and care behind it. It isn't just a set of lessons or ideas. It's a thoughtful, supportive experience that meets you where you are and helps you grow from there. What makes this program truly incredible is the message itself. It's empowering, grounded, and honest. It helped me see things more clearly, understanding myself better, and move forward with confidence instead of doubt. The message resonated with me on a personal level, and over time it became something I could return to whenever I needed clarity, motivation, or reassurance. It reminded me of my own strength and worth in moments when I needed that reminder most. The support throughout the program has been exceptional. My Incredible Messenger has been constantly encouraging, patient, and genuinely invested in my progress. Knowing that someone truly cared not just about the outcome, but about me made all the difference. That kind of support creates a safe space to grow, ask questions, and make mistakes, and keep going without fear of judgment. It has made the entire experience feel human, not transactional. Because of this program, I feel more grounded, more confident, and more aligned with whom I want to be. The Incredible Message program didn't just give me information, it gave me perspective. It helped me shift my mindset, build resilience, and approach challenges with a healthier and more positive outlook. Overall, the Incredible Measures program is exactly what its name promises. It is thoughtful, impactful, and genuinely supportive. I am extremely grateful for the message, the guidance, and the care behind it. This program has made a lasting difference in my life, and I would wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone looking for growth, clarity, and meaningful support.
Awesome. Thank you for your testimony.
No problem.
I believe we have one more, Mr.
Mr.
Staten.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Councilman. So as a credible messenger, I definitely want to say good afternoon. Again, my name is Jamie Staten. I am a credible messenger with the Alliance of Concerned Men. It is truly a privilege, right, to be here today and to share my lived experience and service to our youth, to our families, also to our communities. This work is more than a job to me personally. It is about being a part of an ongoing support system, showing up consistently, being honest, being present, and being real. Being a credible messenger takes passion, resilience, and also purpose. It requires us to meet the young people where they are, whether that's inside the facilities, if it's in the neighborhoods we serve, or in their own homes, and to walk with them through every stage of their transformation. That's part of that personal passion that we share. Our role is to touch their lives on every level, right? All the levels. We work to, I'd like to say, inspire, to empower, to encourage, to motivate, and to number one, to build that trust with our youth, also their families, though, because it's important to make that reconnection. We help reconnect the young people back with their families and the positive support systems. We do encourage goal settings, forward thinking, positive forward thinking, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, and healthy decision making. We are not here to judge, right? We are here to guide. One thing that I always share with my youth is that, when we show up, I see you, I don't see you as such and such that did this or such and such that did that. No, I look at you as the child that needs help. So how can I supply that support and be that support system with you? One of the most important lessons in this work is learning to see the youth for who they truly are. When I look at them, I don't see that kid who did that once again or who made that mistake. I really truly see the child that needs help, that needs that support, that direction and that belief. Someone who deserves, right, another chance, another opportunity. Nobody's perfect. You got to let the process. This is why we continue to be the vessels of hope and stability in their lives. Sometimes people say he just don't get it. But I believe the truth is he just hasn't gotten it yet. Growth takes time. Healing takes patience. I've been through it. It took me time. It took me patience to process those traumas. And the transformation, it takes consistency. We got to show up. We got to be there. And we're there on all the levels, inside, outside, in the house, in the community. So we take pride in that. That's our way with our presence. I feel personally that it matters so much. One thing I always like to say, and that I've learned throughout so many wonderful trainings that they provide for us, right, as a credible message, that this work is intentional. It's fast paced, it's high intensity, and it requires a unique set of skills that we got: emotional strength, cultural understanding, live experience, accountability, and compassion. We challenge our youth, but we also challenge ourselves because in order to truly love and support others, we must continue growing ourselves. I'm just about done, but I am proud to be a part of the Credible Messenger program. I really wanted to express that. I'm proud of the youth that we serve. I am committed to continuing this work, to showing up, staying consistent, and helping the young people build better futures for themselves and their families on behalf of the Credible Messenger Initiative. I appreciate you and thank you for your opportunity to let me speak.
Thank you. And I'm totally still in that line. Let the process process. I love that. I love that. No, thank you all. And I will have some questions for you. I wanted to come to you, Mr. Miller. And again, we're going to focus on the transition planning because I agree there's no reason why that work shouldn't be connected to these individualized plans that are already being created. It just seems intuitive that it would be one process versus these disconnected processes. I recall testimony from the director, and it was January of this year that in earnest, the transition team was supposed to be in place. So that too will be part of our focus. But I wanted to just have you elaborate. What ideally would you want to see for the agency in doing effective outreach and planning as a young person transitions?
So I don't want to be disagreeable, but thus far we have yet to see an individualized rehabilitation plan. So they may exist, but they may be like the transition plans, and we're just waiting for the reveal. We're excited about that, but the debut has yet to come. What we would really like to see is we'd like to see ongoing.
Quick question on
Sorry.
that. So when you say you haven't seen a plan, is it that, as Ms. Spain was saying, they aren't really individualized, or is it that you just haven't seen a plan in general?
Well, all we can say is what they're sending. They're sending these things and saying they are the individualized rehabilitation plans, but they're the same sort of they'll say things like the youth should, work with a mentor or should receive therapy. That's all it will say. And then, these are our clients, so we can sort of see what's really happening and what's not, and they're not connected to the experience that our clients are receiving. So I'm not sure. I think transition planning is really important, and you are absolutely right. It should be closely tied to the individualized rehabilitation plan, but it is not being, because they're not doing the first part in a way that's individualized. So if you don't mind, I'll just answer the question, which is what we'd like to see. So we'd like to see deep collaboration. We'd like to see them working with family, right? Because things like, functional family therapy, multi-systemic therapy can help a young person when they're coming home have the right relationship and have that family have the right sort of services that they need when they're going to re-enter the community. We think that DYRS should be responsible for figuring out where a kid is going to go to school when they come home. So we think they should be thinking about that. So they should be thinking about, what behavioral services the child should need. And, the Medicaid waiver is an opportunity to do this, to have the core services agency sort of going into the facility to create a relationship with the child before they leave, rather than depending on the YDRs, who are the ones who are providing most of the therapeutic support with that inadequate training. So I apologize, but that's the kind of thing I would suggest.
No, that's super helpful. And you mentioned the behavioral assessments and mental health support. Can you speak in broad strokes as to how, what you're witnessing at YSC or in New Beginnings is impacting the young people, them not receiving the support and services that they should receive?
So I'll just say in brief, we think that there's relatively good psychiatric services, right? So medication management. And that's one sort of standout at New Beginnings. But at YSC, certainly what we're seeing is that young people are receiving maybe a session or two a week with a therapist, but mostly what they're getting is group therapy with YDRs, right? And that's has the quality level for an extraordinarily good YDR of being really, really great. But for a brand new YDR who just started and doesn't really know their way around, and is just sort of trying to occupy the time, can be really terrible and negative. And many youth just refuse.
And I'm assuming you would advocate for more individualized support there. Okay. That is helpful. Dr. Wolfson, I wanted to come to you. From your preliminary findings, what is the quality of sleep for adolescents at YSC and New Beginnings? I thought your study was really interesting, but curious to what findings you have.
We really don't have our findings yet. I mean, I'm hesitant to draw any conclusions based on the 20 youth that we've been working with. I can tell you the kinds of questions that we are kind of aware of that we need to look at. And I should also say that I've worked previously with the similar facilities in Maryland and have some publications from that. And I think we're going to see some similar observations. One concern already has to do with the kinds of schedules the adolescents are on. So what do I mean by that? We know that the youth who are under your care are adolescents, and we know that adolescents need 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and they need it to be aligned with their biological clocks. And so I have concerns about how early youth are asked to return to their rooms, possibly unable to fall asleep. And in fact, they're staggered at new beginnings. So in other words, you might have youth, and it's based on their behavior during the day. You may have youth who have struggled during the day, but are actually then sent to their room earlier than other youth and aren't going to be able to wind down. But these are just very preliminary observations. One of the reasons that we're collecting, both for research reasons to understand, but also I think will be very helpful to understand in terms of the facilities, and this is really novel work. Maryland and DC will now be really some of the only states or jurisdictions who have thought about these important questions. But light, and one of the things we've observed at New Beginnings is that light, artificial light varies, that is to say what bulbs or what lights are turned on, as well as access to light, because light's really important during the day and we need less light. Yes, we need to think about security, but less light at night. And so concern about lights being left on during the night, perhaps lights that don't necessarily have to be on. But we're really still in the very beginning stages, and we'll hear a lot from the youth because we're doing these interviews, and I know we're going to learn a lot from these short interviews with the youth as well, and what their experience is. But I'll be able to say much more in a couple of months.
Understood. If I can just push a little bit more,
Sure.
in your exposure with YSC, and we know that overcrowding is an issue there. Have you noted any impacts to sleep hygiene or young people's ability to sleep there, or is that too premature?
It's too premature. We did do a walkthrough. We've had 2 walkthroughs at YSC, one to collect what we call observational data, not of the youth themselves, but the facility. But we're literally about to start, on Wednesday of this week, inviting youth to participate in the project at YSC. So again, we will have much more to say at your next kind of hearing, and I'll be more than delighted to share what we find.
Well, thank you, and I'm excited that the agency is undertaking or participating in this study.
It's been a wonderful, really good collaboration, and similar to what you were hearing from Dr. Woolard, we've engaged, I have graduate and undergraduate research assistants who are very involved too, and again, thinking about future roles in the system, which I think is a great contribution as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Dr. Woolard, what actionable feedback have you or are you planning to share with DYRS regarding the OASIS program? And I'm thrilled that you all are looking at it.
Thanks for the question. So we've just begun the collaboration. So I can't give you any specifics about what the feedback will be. So we've had some initial meetings and some site visits out to the OASIS program area. We're working with the folks who are delivering the mentoring services and with the DYRS staff and the logic model that underlies the intervention program to identify the priorities that they would have for the outcomes that they think are most important and most relevant. And then we're going to be working with them to identify ways that we can assess those outcomes, both from the youth, both in terms of potential interviews, but also questionnaires that they'll be able to fill out. So it's kind of a long-winded way to say we're developing it at the moment.
Understood. I'm a big fan of the OASIS program, and I've long said we should be expanding that work to be more preventative for our young people. And so I'm looking forward to what you come up with. Mr. Broad, I wanted to come to you. You alluded to recommendations. Can you elaborate on some of those recommendations that you would have for DYRS to move further in their transition to be a greener agency?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So, the research shows that simple things like, like dish placement, which dish you put up front of the line, or where you put it. Things like just having an appetizing name for a dish, or following DOE's recommendations to not do red meat any more than twice a week can help, not just with climate, but also with nutrition and adjusting food disparities.
Okay. And let me just make sure, do we have your written testimony?
You do not?
Okay, if you could submit that so we can follow up on those recommendations, that would be great.
Yep.
Awesome. And then last but certainly not least, Mr. Mack, Rivers, and Staten, thank you for your testimony. I thought it was compelling. Any of you, can you just walk me through like what a typical day or week might look like in terms of programming for you? I found the reflection on the value of the Credible Messenger program to be helpful. It's also worth noting the agency, or the executive rather, cut DYRS's access to credible messengers or reduce that budget line item. But walk me through what a typical day or week looks like in terms of engagement and activities.
Well, thank you for the opportunity once again. So a typical week or a day for me, normally I would make a visit to the facility, either YRC or New Beginnings, depending on how I manage my caseload for that day, to check up on, whatever youth I have in there, see how they doing, any, extra additional support they need, and just to do a wellness check, also to sit there and go over some life skills or, positive thinking moving forward, or whatever the blueprint, our road to success. Whatever we're working on, I'm going to invest in you for at least an hour in that facility and see what's going on. And that's on each of my youth. And what I would do from there, once I leave there, I would 9 out of 10, I give a phone call to their, their household, their parents, let them know, hey, listen, I just come from here seeing your son or your daughter, that everything's going good. They're participating, going great. So that's early in the part of the day. From there, we got to go back. We got to enter notes. We got to communicate with, everybody that we got to. Our care coordination teams, especially, we want to definitely keep them all involved to make sure that the flow of information is so key to what we do. So the care coordination team and the credible messengers got to be on the same page. From there, once I make my facility visits, I come out, document. From there, I got my community minute visits. So if I got kids at school, if I got kids that's working, I'm popping up. Hey, are we at work? Are we at school? Are we where we need to be? Anything else I need to be facilitating, throughout the day. Meanwhile, phone calls with my family engagement specialist, making sure the family is well. Because one thing that we truly, truly notice, you can't treat the kid and don't treat the family. We're a package deal. So I like to always say everything with the work we start inside this facility, we got to do this work in here to make sure it follows us out here so we can bring it back to your family. We can bring it back to the community. You can make those, even our youth groups. Like we do weekly youth groups. Every Thursday we have youth groups. We got in-person youth groups, and they're really, really successful. It gives us an opportunity to bring our youth from all the different dynamics, together in a safe space, and we can build as a collective. We can't build as individuals. It's a little too hard to do. We got to build as a community. So we try to take, a lot of processing time in that. That's a lot that goes through on our day. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say thank you for that. That's helpful. What engagement, if any, do you regularly have with young people's families?
Well, we have family engagement specialists that meet with our families often, very often. I know it's several times throughout the month and actually throughout the week as well, depending on what the needs are or what the circumstance is. We have a family engagement department that do that. Me personally, I try to meet with my families as often as I can. After I make so many visits, I go in and check on, because again, we got to treat the child, but we got to treat the family as well. Hey, I want to sit down and have these conversations with you. This is how well your son is doing. This is how well your daughter is doing. Or you know what? Is there a certain direction or conversation you would like me to have on your behalf where I can try to mend this relationship or, foster these things?
And it would seem to me, the reason why I asked that is I trust that you are able to build sustainable relationships and trust with these young people, that the agency would be working with you to cultivate those bonds with the families to ensure that the work continues. But that's also frankly been a challenge that we routinely hear that these meetings are not happening regularly. And so what I'm hearing from your testimony is that your engagement seems or feels different. Please weigh in if that's not accurate. But also, we've heard testimony today that the individualized plans that every young person is supposed to have within DYRS is not really happening. They're not being created. Do you have any exposure to the plans, or are you meeting with folks to say, this is this young person's individual goals and how your engagement with them is gonna help them meet those goals?
Okay, me personally, we as a credible messenger, we definitely create our personal plan. That's part of our approach, part of how we build that trust, right? Give me 10 goals, realistic goals, or 10 things you want to achieve, or anything, so we can get it and we'll crunch it down to some hard decisions so we can have a genuine focus on topics of discussion. But
And where
also
do those goals live?
Say that again. No, well, me personally, as a credible messenger, well, we get goals from care coordination, who they come up with a whole plan. They give us a plan that we work in direction towards. But us as credible messengers, also, we have the youth create their own plan to success. See, when you give me these goals, what it does is it allows me every type of thing or every way that you're going to engage with me. Okay, well, you like this, well, you want to be a doctor, or you want to go back to school, or you want to do these things. So we get that list, and it gives us a way to have these conversations and find a way in. How do we build that trust? How do we have this, this constant conversation of where you're going to really allow me to help you?
Understood. And then last question, how do you define success?
Me personally, how do I define success?
For the credible messengers, like, how are we defining success? So in the budget process, for me to go to bat, I'm assuming my colleague's gonna say, how do we know that this program is worth $1 million? Now, I'm familiar with the Credible Messenger program in general, but how are you all defining success with the young people that you're working with?
The small steps lead to the big steps. We go through the process. Success is outcomes. Success is, okay, let's get that GED, or when we come out of this facility, let's finish school and let's do it. Let's get that job. Success is, all the little things that go on between making smarter decisions than what you were before. Like I said earlier, the process, you got to let the process. So it's so many steps to reaching the ultimate success. But success comes in so many different ways and dynamics. It's hard to pinpoint, the actual, the main success.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. And I'm going to thank all of you all for being here. And we have been joined by one person that was called earlier, Shamika Edwards. While they transition, I'm going to ask you to come up and you can give your testimony. And make sure the button is on. There you go.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Shamika Edwards, and I'm actually a parent of a child that was in DYRS. So I wanted to speak on behalf of things that I witnessed and experienced as a parent. And I would like to partner to be able to help create better programming for the children. So I do feel like the complete system had failed my child, along with I saw countless other children. I'm also in partnership with Anchored in Strength Parents Support Program. And we all share the same sentiments, how our children were going through so many different hands, going through DYRS system, and they were supposed to be being connected with various partnerships that were supposed to help and aid in allowing for our children to transition back into the community. Unfortunately, a lot of those programs did not do what they promised. And a lot of our children end up going in and out of the system, because when they're coming back out into the community, you're sending them back into the same community where they committed the same crimes. So if they're not given any form of outlet outside of that community, and people who are going to be trustworthy. And when I mention trustworthy, if you have one organization promising your child, hey, I'm gonna do this for you, I'm gonna follow up with you, I'm gonna stay on top of this, I'm gonna help you get a job, and then they don't keep their word, the child and the family loses hope in an organization. And then you go into another organization. And then as a parent, it's frustrating because now I have to keep repeating these same traumas over and over and over again to so many different people. And then your child gets ciphered through some more hands. They drop the ball. Then they're ciphered through some more hands. They drop the ball. So then it now becomes the kids, they don't want to engage in resources because they don't have trust in the organizations that are saying that they're going to do the things that they say they're going to do. So what happens is they end up turning back into the streets because it's like, my friend may not be doing the best thing, but at least I can trust them. And so even with DYRS, when I'm going to leave, I had to keep leaving work to go pick my son up. They would tell me, you need to come now. I would sit in that waiting room for 2 to 3 hours before my son is released. I don't know if it was a staffing issue. I don't know if it was a disorganization issue, but I could have stayed at work and I missed 3 hours. And you're talking about if your child gets locked up multiple times in a month, that's multiple days being missed from work. So, and then when you try to speak to certain people within the facility in relation to, you know, why does this process take so long? Even the disorganization when we're doing visitation, the whole structure needs to be restructured because it makes it very frustrating when you're already going to a compromising situation where your child is in a facility. That is heartbreaking in itself. And then when you have to come and staff, a lot of times don't know what they're doing. Everybody's moving along. Sometimes there's no empathy. Sometimes there's no care for your child, like for someone to treat your child like it was their own. So sometimes it's like you're just a number when you're coming into the facilities. And you're not even being acknowledged the fact that you're a human being and your child is a human being. And this is a humanized experience that is very difficult. And nothing can really prepare you for this process. Even if you've had family members who may have been in the incarceration system, it's a completely different process when it's your child. And I feel like the only program that I personally saw work, and I'm saying my son went through this process for over 4.5 years. So pretty much a whole high school term. Anchored in Strength was a parent support group with Miss Princess. And when I tell you I could not have been able to get through this process without this program, she just unfortunately lost her contract with the DYRS after being in this program for 14 years. And we don't know exactly why, but we are trying to do things to help her get into her own place. But I just want to say that that program helped me tremendously. And to any parents that are listening, this program helped me through the whole process. Because sometimes when you are a parent and maybe your friends or family members have not been in the situation to know what it feels like to visit a child incarcerated, you can't speak to them. There's no safe space for that. So my testimony is to attest to that. I think a lot of things within the DYRS system needs to change because the children have lost hope. A lot of programs were removed out of the district for the children. They don't trust a lot of the organizations that I'll say they over-deliver and under-promise. And it also, the parents who don't know how to navigate these systems don't have resources either. So it's leaving a generation of people that are lost because we don't know how to fix this situation that's going on. And sometimes I think instead of people always judging the parents and saying, and I think a lot of time is spent on the judgment of the parents saying, well, what were you not doing as a parent that your child ended up in the incarceration system? Where were you lacking? Where were you failing at? Where in some cases that could possibly be certain circumstances that maybe certain children may be exposed to some things, but that's not the case for all children. And every child that falls into the system doesn't mean that their parent was not doing their part. That might just be, like I tell my son all the time, the reason why you ended up in this system, because this is a part of his calling. And a part of his calling was to be able to be in those rooms, in those jail cells, in those facilities, and understanding what was going through his mind, what was going on in his spirit, and what was going on just even in the streets, because he's going to have to come back out into the community and give that same, pay that forward to some other children. But in order for him to be able to do that, he had to be in those spaces. So some children are actually on assignments and call-ins.
Understood.
So,
No, thank you so much. I was happy to give you extra time, and if I can ask questions,
yeah.
because I think you are only parent today with a young person in DYRS, and so this is a huge opportunity. So thank you for being here. Is your son, I think you said, is your
Yes.
son still in DYRS?
No, he's now 18. So he's not in DYRS anymore, no.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, how many times did your son visit DYRS?
Maybe more than 10. And then it transitioned over to Maryland. But yeah, about maybe 10 or 12 times. He just kept going in and out from the age of 13 all the way up till about 16.
And what insight do you have about his experience while in DYRS that would, I'm not going to say cause, but still result in him returning back? In other words, the focus of the agency is on rehabilitation. And I'm clear from my vantage point that we're missing the mark there. The young people aren't getting the tools they need to live more productive lives. But what insight do you have in terms of what was happening during his time inside that still resulted in him going back 9 or 10 more times?
Well, a lot of times what happens is that when they're out in a community, and let's just say, you know, certain neighborhoods don't get along with certain neighborhoods or whatever might have happened, they're ending up in the system in the same jail cells with the same people that they were having issues with when they were outside. So that's what's also creating the fights inside. And I'm not going to attest to all of the employees, because I did find selected people at DYRS who did show care and concern. But sometimes I think it's like, well, if you didn't want to be in this situation, you shouldn't have got locked up. And sometimes that's what the attitude is. And he shared some of those things with me. He stated that sometimes it was like a game in there. It's like things weren't taken serious. So it's pretty much you had to keep your head down, go to class, pay attention, and pretty much stay out of the way. That's the way that they would say it, but you know, stay out of the way.
And during the span of years that your son was in detention there, speak to your engagement with the staff. What I mean by that is we've heard a lot of testimony about parental engagement. Now, the agency will say, oh, we're regularly reaching out to parents, we're having these meetings. Then I hear from parent advocates that say they're not reaching out. What was your experience while your son was in detention?
I did not, nobody reached out to me. The most communication I had was when I'm signing the documents to pick my son up. I'm signing documents. This is what his requirements are. These are what his guidelines are. Sign the paper, give me your ID, and you're sent on your way.
And were all of the stints that your son had in DYRS local, or was he ever placed in a facility outside of DC?
Yes, he's been in multiple facilities between DC, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Baltimore. He's been in various facilities.
And even still, the engagement is poor. In other words, you're not hearing from the agency whether he's in DC or somewhere.
So the agencies that we did hear from, as I attested earlier, they would contact you. I'll give you one example. I had a certain agency, they contacted us. They assigned him a mentor. They followed up the first month. After that, they fall off the face of the earth.
What's the name of that organization? If
I
you
didn't-
remember. Okay.
I would
Okay.
rather not.
It's okay.
Yeah,
If you
it's
want to
fine.
share it with the committee afterwards, that would be helpful.
That's fine.
Okay.
And then I had another organization where they gave him another mentor. He picked him up a few times. And after that, he stopped coming to get him, but he will be documenting that he still was coming to get him. And he was documenting that, oh yeah, I spoke to him, or I spoke to the mother, or I spoke, and nobody has spoken to us. And I reported him, and I got my son removed out of that
Understood.
organization. And that kind of was a consistency where they're getting this money to say that they're going to do all these things in the community, but they're getting the money based upon who they know.
Understood. And another thing we heard today was about exit planning or the lack thereof when a young person is leaving detention, going back into community. What was that experience like for you?
So when he's transitioning to come back home, I'll say up until the last year and a half. And that's probably because I started praying over every person that came into contact with my son. And I noticed that a major shift happened. So the people that he was in communication with as of recently, they made sure he was in the best programs. He had top mentors. He was even getting paid internships for certain programs. So the transition in DC, it was horrible. There was no success. There was nothing worked. Nothing, no organization. I can't say not one organization helped my son in DC.
So walk me through it. You go to the facility, you're picking him up, at times having to wait 2-3 hours in the waiting room while you're there. What are you being given? What communication is there? Is he enrolling back in school or getting a job? Walk me through what that actual transition looks like from picking him up to him trying to get back on his feet.
So most of the time, especially starting at the age of 13, he would get locked up. He often would go into the facility, DYRS, then he would be released. A little slap on the wrist, go home. And then he was already in school. So he would have to be required to go back to school. But a lot of times that was treated as not taking it serious. So he goes back to school. Guess what? He goes back around the same group of people. Guess what? Another situation happens. So that goes on and on and on and on and on for a time frame. Then when he gets close to the like 15, 16, because now they have the Title 16 brought back, now they're going to start doing different things. Now they're going to put you on probation. And you are so told that in this time frame of the probation, you're not allowed to be around certain people. You're not allowed to be in certain neighborhoods. You are only required to go to school, come back home. And you're only supposed to be with your parents and your parents only. Anybody outside of that, you're in violation. But it's still a slap on the wrist. So he's going to school, but when I'm dropping him off at school, he's leaving school. So what happens? He's back out in the community. So then the next step was, we're going to take you out of the home. We're going to put you in a group home. In the group home, it was various group homes, from Umbrella to, I think it was some, just different group homes. And then they're now required to take him to school, pick him back up from school. That wasn't really effective. Then you're now told, now we're going to try this. Now you're on a different type of probation. Now you have to do urines. It's now a little bit more stricter. But I think that if certain requirements are put in place early on so that they know that this is not something that should be taken lightly, and that when services are being rendered early on, that certain things would drastically change. Because if you keep telling somebody they can do this and they come home, do this and they come home, do this and they come home, and then they're going into DYRS, that's not having any structure. They see that the people don't care. Some of the staff may be talking to the children like that's one of their friends. So there's not respect levels there. Then certain people that are putting laws in place are not enforcing certain things. And I'm not saying like for everybody to just go to jail and do 16 years the first time something happens at 13. But what I'm saying is they really need to go through the process of these organizations that are saying that they're going to help people when they're coming home. Because I feel like if they really take the time to really hire real mentors who really care about these children, and somebody is actually working hands-on with them at the age of 13 and they really care, they might not make it to 16 and be in the system. Because the program has been restructured as in a place where they don't feel like it's a game, it's a joke. So now that he's 16, now I'm having to keep doing the pickup process, drop off process with the group home. Now that doesn't work. Now he's back home. So when I'm going in, like I said, to pick my son up, nobody's updating me on what's going on. You're just basically sitting there, just waiting to see your child come to the door when they open it. You may keep going over like, can you call back there? How much longer is it going to be? Oh, let me call upstairs. Oh, they say they're still getting his stuff together. Oh, they say they're still doing his paperwork. Oh, they're still waiting for this. But you all knew when he was getting transitioned back from the court building, if we had to go to court or a hearing, you all should have already had this paperwork in place. How long does it really take to put a signature on a piece of paper? And then you don't even have enough courtesy to tell a parent what's going on and why is it taking 3 hours to pick your child up. And once you receive your documents, they let you go on about your business, and whatever the judge stated is what the new reprimands are. And then whatever new organization they try to partner them with, it's just an epic fail all the way across the board.
Understood. This is really helpful. And thank you for just being so forthright and open and sharing. I imagine it's difficult to have to talk about this, as you alluded to earlier, and keep talking about it. But what recommendations would you give this committee for how we can fight? And it is a fight to try to improve DYRS, because in so many ways, it seems like an agency where not many things are working right. Where would you encourage us to lean in and move things in the right direction?
Where there was actually, and I think it could and give more context. I don't remember the name of the company, but I can provide the link. There was a study done where this particular organization did come to our parent group, and they interviewed other parents. And they also went into the facilities and they interviewed with the children. And it was a very in-depth report. And it shared what the children were feeling. And a lot of them stated in this report that they felt like sometimes it's easier to stay incarcerated because coming back out, it's too hard to transition. Because you have to think about, depending on how many times a child has gone in and out of the system, they fall behind gravely in school. Even if they're doing school at Maya Angelou, like what happened to my son, what happens is when they're transitioning back out, they're not always going to an alternative school. And so the grading system in an alternative school and the grading system in a traditional, maybe let's say a public school, the curriculum is different. And then they're getting half credits, and there's a semester base in an alternative school where a DCPS or another traditional public school is graded on a year basis.
Yes.
So
And if I could jump in, that is something we're actively working on. We actually introduced a bill to correct that part so that young people are receiving full credit for the work that they're doing in the agency. And I'm going to use this opportunity to call on our chairman to actually have a hearing and move that bill forward, because I do realize that that is in fact a barrier for kids like your son across the district. But keep going.
And so what happens is the children come home and they're trying to play catch up. And a lot of them end up dropping out of school. A lot of them end up not finishing their curriculum because if they have an IEP or any special needs, they may already feel defeated. And then when they're now someone's telling them that, oh, well, I took this class when I was in this facility. But then when you come back to a regular school, they're like, oh, that doesn't work. You have to take it over. So then now the child is having to redo something that they've already done, and then pushing them back further from graduation. And a lot of times they drop out.
And what I'm hearing you say is there just needs to be more intentional support for young people leaving detention, coming back into the community. And that's what we heard from our witnesses today, that there just needs to be more support. I can hear some saying, and I disagree with this, well, that's your responsibility, Mom. Like now your son's in your care, but something you said really resonates with me, like they're already feeling behind and trying to catch up, and those same competing temptations that probably resulted in them being in detention in the first place around them. Even if you're doing your best at home to kind of protect them, they still are out in community going to school with those influences.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you. If you could provide that link after the fact, I would love, I think I know the report you're talking about, but I would love to see it. We will certainly follow up with the agency on a number of topics that have resonated today in no particular order, but this focus on transition planning, the lack of implementation of the Road Act, the secure detention placement in DC versus out-of-state placements, and the list goes on. There has been some progress, I would say, that we've had with the agency in expanding its educational offerings within the facility, but that's still very much a work in progress, because I'm clear that that is a big factor in if a young person is going to get on the right track or not. I'm going to give you the last word. If there's any recommendations you have or last words you want to leave the committee with.
I just want to thank you all for this time to speak or testify on behalf of not only my son, but I think other parents that I'm in connection with. And I do have faith that you will try to make sure that there are certain things that are implemented to create change. I'm willing to be a part of anything that you may need assistance with as far as any other ideas or anything of that magnitude that can help with creating that change. But I just feel like there needs to be a lot of things that are changed and a lot of things with the children. Some of them do actually want to do better. Some of them do have a desire to want to have a better future. Sometimes I don't think some of them are given the opportunity because someone may see something that they did and then they view them as what's on paper. And then if you actually sat down with the child, you're like, this can't possibly be the same person. So I think sometimes people have to be a little bit more open-minded and understand that we all ourselves have done things that maybe not have always been honorable or great. But it doesn't mean that that's the lens that someone should be able to view you for the rest of your life because of certain decisions. And it's just certain things may be going on in these children's lives in that point in time. They're surrounded a bunch of kids are dying. A lot of family members are dying in the communities. And who has grief support for these children? Where's the grief support? That's outside of therapy. Sometimes, what if they don't have insurance for therapy? Sometimes the parents may have limited capabilities within themselves that they may not even have the bandwidth or the mental stability to be able to contact a service for their child because maybe they're tapped out themselves. So there's certain things I think sometimes can take a closer look and think about if you were in this situation, what would I want someone to do for me? So.
Well, thank you again for that testimony. I do want to stay in touch with you, sir. If you can make sure, I think my team already has your contact.
Yes.
But I would love to work with you in contacting other parents, as that's been an ongoing focus for our committee, is interfacing with as many parents as possible to unearth ideas. I again want to thank all of our public witnesses today. Your insights will better help our committee as we move forward during this oversight season with DYRS and the other agencies under the purview of our committee. Again, I will repeat, for those that were unable to testify today, you can submit written testimony and the record will remain open until 5:30 p.m. on Monday, February 16th. And with that, we will conclude the business before the committee today. The time is now 12:40 p.m., and this performance oversight hearing is adjourned. Thank you.